All right. Now we're going to learn about introductions, conclusions, and data, which are all very important when we are telling a story. All right. And I want to keep this pretty tight, just like introductions, conclusions, and data should also not take a lot of time. It's like your own inner monologue. It's not the most important part of the story, but it is important to have there. So introductions, how to start. We'll start off with reading what introduction is. Karen, can you please read to us what is an introduction?
An introduction is the opening part of the story. It tells the audience what the story is about and makes them want to listen.
Okay, so an introduction is the opening part of a story or a presentation. In this case, we're opening and presenting our hot take before we go into the different parts. Okay, please continue, Karen. Tell us why is it important?
It grabs attention, it sets the topic and mood, and it helps the audience understand and care about the story.
Very good. Okay, so grabs attention, sets the mood, helps understand the story. I want to say for introductions and conclusions, everyone, key is keeping them short. We want to move on to our topic, our hot take, and to our story very fast. So introductions and like conclusions both need to be very tight. This is sort of like the arching as I'm going to give a few types of introductions that for our presentation, I would say, unless you really have something you think is amazing, like use these. Stay safe. If you wander, the reason that introductions and conclusions are the types I'm showing you now is because they're short. Okay. Some people spend like their introduction telling half of their lecture, and then people are hearing it again. So the main idea with all these things is that it's tight and it's efficient. So there are four introduction types. One is provocative facts. Number two is a raw personal story, which again is separate from the personal story because you don't get into all parts of the story. But it can also be like a raw opening of a personal story that you call back to later, a high stakes question, or a quote fact which you then challenge. All right. These all are pretty self explanatory, but I will go through them pretty quickly. Provocative fact. For example, your brain decides if something is worth hearing in 7 seconds, or you have about 15 seconds before your phone is going to come out. All right, these are things that are some examples. Some of you will find them more provocative than others. The idea with the provocative fact is you're switching from listening. Now, remember, when we're going to be doing this, it's going to be challenging. There are going to be a bunch of presentations, 20, 30 presentations back to back. It's going to be a lot. So you really have to separate from what came before to yours. So if you bring a provocative fact, it's a piece of knowledge people didn't know that engages the mind going, wow, is it really 15 seconds before I next touch my phone? I'm going to start thinking about that. You know, the one about someone is worth hearing in 7 seconds, that also, like, we kind of knew that. But if it's something that you didn't know, that you didn't think of, it's like, half a packet of salt will make sure your taste buds work for the entire flight. Interesting, maybe not as provocative. So you want to push something which even can be like sort of like a hot take or something which is, can lead up to your hot take. Sometimes it can even be your hot take. Your introduction can be the beginning of your speech. But if you want to have something before that, one idea is a provocative fact. Number two is a raw personal story. This can be a lead into your personal story or if it's something better just to get attention. When I was 15, I froze in front of my class and I couldn't say a single word. Or my worst mistake in my life started with me trying to impress a guy for prom. Okay? Like these things, we hear the vulnerability. Like I froze in front of class. My worst mistake. We want to hear that. We are interested. That's what draws us in. If we remember in the stories and examples we see, it's usually this point of vulnerability that we most connect to, that we most open to. So if you want to do this as an introduction type, you can also tell the full story of it later, but this is where it's sort of like the trailer of the movie needs to get you in. It's like the worst day of my life is when I lost my 3-year old and thought I would never see her again when I went skiing. The worst day of my life is the one where I failed the test I studied for 7 hours and I thought that I was broken. Things like that, that kind of idea. So that already leads into it. So the raw personal story introduction is a second one. Third is a high stakes question. What would you do if you had only 60 seconds to save your reputation? Or have you ever lost someone important because you stayed silent? Or hurt someone because you stayed silent? I think heard is better. Okay, this kind of thing already can jog people's memories. It's not as strong as your story. If you go into detail about how you hurt someone because you stayed silent, like I saw that the way he was acting was pushing people away. But like I didn't want to hurt his feelings, so I didn't say anything. Something like that. The more details, or if I say like my friend Joe was pushing friends away because he had a whole bunch of tables and chairs stolen by someone he didn't know, and since then he didn't trust people and was very short with them on the phone. Starts to paint a picture. So high stakes question is a third example. Fourth is challenging a known assumption. They say practice makes perfect. I disagree. Or everyone says be yourself, but this is actually the path to self-sabotage, you know? So you take a known axiom and say this is wrong and connect to it later. All right, so these are four examples. When you review the slideshow or this presentation, you'll see them all. My main idea with all of them is that they go pretty fast. Okay, the introduction types, a provocative fact, you say it, people are interested, you had the disconnect, and it moves on. And it's not audience dependent. Raw personal story introduction, same idea. High stakes question, same idea. They're fast. Within 20 seconds, you're done your introduction. It doesn't need to be longer. It can even be 15 seconds. It's like, for me, when I froze, like it set my career back 5 years. Did you know that eating beets will actually help you relax? Let me give you a story, something like that. All right, so for all of these, the key is your introduction is fast. I recommend for everybody, like no more than 5 lines. And if it is, make sure it's justified. Okay, because we're introducing our idea that we're trying to persuade. And for our story, introductions like is where the audience like is listening and seeing if we're worth listening to. But you want to make it fast. Same thing for conclusions. Okay, so introductions. Do we have any questions on the introduction types? Okay, great. Next, conclusions. Quick and to the point. Okay, this is the idea. There are three types of conclusions that I want to bring attention to. Premise, and that's why key takeaway. That's number one. Okay, two is callback, three is a quote. All right. So before I get into these, I want to ask our participants here for for you, what would be the most important thing that our like the presentation would be if we give one of the stories, let's say for Tamara. So okay, or Sharona, do you want to say? All right, guess not. Okay, Tamara, from your story, what would you like people to take away from it?
At first, when I started it, I wanted like the idea that I wanted to get across is that people lie all the time about like how they and that they don't tell the truth about like their mistakes, like the fadichot. That was the idea. But I don't know
Okay.
exactly. I've been struggling with it.
Okay, so that's interesting because like the driver for the story, and it's a good story, doesn't necessarily have a lesson. Does someone else here have a takeaway that they would want to come, forgetting from your story, just a lesson you'd like to impart to the audience?
Maybe something like embracing your failure, but it's like something that we've all heard. It's not a how did you call it? A hot cake? Hot take?
It's not a hot take. That's true. Anyone else? Shiran, from your fake story about your driving, what is something that you would want the audience to learn from that?
Like after we've given all the things I need to do, like the things are just the story of my
What would
faults.
you want the audience to take away from that?
I mean, that I'm trying to make it work.
Okay, but what should they learn from it?
Don't
That
go to Zara.
that we needed don't go to that. That we like need to time manage well our lives to get things done effectively. Maybe
Very
that's
nice. That's a good
everyone.
one. Wanting there to be like more efficient time management. Okay. Anyone else? Is there what's a life lesson? Adi, what's a life lesson that you would want to impart at the end of a story?
That we should accept who we are and I'm talking about myself, right? About
Yeah.
my story. Right. So
Yeah.
that we should accept who we are and try to try to see ourselves in a positive light. There might be some advantages to your situation.
Okay, so it's on a positive light. So it's interesting that even like, so how do you fit that in a hot take in a story? That's part of our planning. Okay, but for all these, we have something that we want the audience to take away. Okay, 1 second. Okay, so very good. So we have we have a few things here we can want the audience to take away. How do we do that? How do we finish our talk and not say, before we say thank you, what is it that we're trying to do? Okay, so for conclusions, and I say quick and to the point because also they're not supposed to be too long. So number one, premise, and that's why, key takeaway. Two is a callback, three is a quote. Number one, key takeaway. You repeat the premise of your talk. And that's why you should love yourself. And that's why always look for the thing you lost one more time. And that's why you should make sure to talk to the person left to you on the bus. That's it. Simple one-liner for the key takeaway. And if you don't know what else to do, this is what you should do. Repeat the premise, and that's why. That's it. One line, two lines, done. What is the key takeaway the audience should have? At this point, you finished your story, you finished, and from that day, I always do like my impulsive activities on my weekend. And that's why from that day, and that's why I put a parental lock on my phone. Everyone, this is why if you can't control your cell phone time, you should make your phone black and white. You can put a parental lock on your control. Parental lock for January is 50% off. Okay, so that's number one. Key takeaway, repeat it, and that's why, and that's it. Number two, callback. And this is sort of the difference of stylistically. Like key takeaway is a repetition. Callback. Mention a specific term or theme from the story and use the same specific, instead of term, I'll say wording. Use the same words. People like memory. There's also, people like rhymes. If it doesn't fit, you acquit. You know, it's it's all the same when you play the game. Like easier to remember is easier for the mind.
I don't
Okay,
think
and
the
Daniel,
first one was the best rhyme that you should use. We're not OJ.
well, but it sticks. Why did that stick when so many other famous sentences don't? If you can make it rhyme, it doesn't hurt. So same thing. When you use a specific unique term in your story at some point in your presentation, and then you use it again at the end, this callback works for the brain because it's all going to be happening very fast. 4 minutes is an eternity to sit in silence, but it is nothing when you're listening to a good story. So for this, once we brought people through this whole emotional journey, and we remember last class, David talked about how he was on a bus and how he was in Tel Aviv and the pizza and the danger there. So, and if he says like next time I'm gonna eat my big pizza with cheese at home, something along those lines. And so we're like, oh, right, there was a pizza involved. We totally forgot about that. So that's another thing which can tie into it and reinforce some idea. So callback mention something that comes from the story. It can be cute. You can mention that this could be anything previously. It doesn't need to come from the resolution of your story. It can come from the introduction, from the once upon a time, And that's why, even though it's like, so if you have a child like Little Red Riding Hood who's curious, make sure before they go to grandma, that they, pack their cookies and, don't talk to strangers. Whatever it may be. It can tie back to the once upon a time. It can come from any point as long as it's specific and memorable. And taking as an example, what is the most memorable part of the Disney movie Aladdin? Most memorable thing. Most memorable
When
character.
we
Be careful what you wish
Genie.
for.
Who's the most memorable character?
Genie.
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 Genie. No
Obviously.
question, right? Who's the most memorable from The Lion King?
Mufasa.
Simba.
Okay, so
Timon and
we have
Pumbaa.
Car,
Timon and
car.
Mufasa.
okay, great, good. From Aladdin though, is it the genie?
Papa.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. So we see, okay, who's the most memorable from Beauty and the Beast?
Belle, of course.
Gaston.
Lumière.
Okay, so we have split opinions. Okay. So in this way, it's interesting that sometimes, did anyone here see Pirates of the Caribbean movie?
Of course, it's a
Okay.
classic.
The
So
first one,
who's the most memorable character there?
Jack
Jack
Sparrow.
Sparrow.
Jack
Okay.
Sparrow.
Perfect. Okay, so we see here with some of them our opinions are split and some of them they aren't. And then this is where I'm saying that like when we're looking at the idea of callback, there are certain things that we agree on, and sometimes in our story, some element may be so bizarre or unique or memorable that that is what stands in our mind, even if we brought people through a completely different emotional journey and brought them to a whole other place. For example, if we know that sale on Zara is, the fact that Shiran's a very impulsive buyer, then that may be the thing to call back, even if the story goes to a completely different place and talks about responsibility and talks about how she got on the Zoom and how it was on time and turned around and got 100 in the course and then she taught 30 Hishtami about herself. But in the end, the callback can be, everyone, who would have believed that I got 100 and challenged myself because I loved spring sales at Zara. You know, because Zara is the standout. That's the unique element. Okay, and that's and the same idea. If we say that there's a specific parent control app, like called Family Link or something, we say like, hey, if you're too phone addicted, Family Link is good for you and for your 7-year old. So something like that. So callback comes back, but make sure to use specific words. Do not paraphrase that part of our brain that likes repetition. Repetition makes things more accessible. Repetition makes things more accessible. Repetition makes things more accessible. Okay. So that's the idea. If you use a callback, use the same words, echo the same theme, make it clear, do not paraphrase. The callback, like in general, is paraphrasing, but that specific thing should be the same. Okay, so that's callback to anything in your story, to anything in your presentation. Usually, the most memorable thing will be good, but that's up to you. Number three, quote. Use a quote that supports your idea. The difference between callback and quote is affirmation from the outside. It's something we never heard before, but supports the same idea. And the reason that I'm saying use a quote is because a quote gives you the stamp of approval and support of an outside authority figure, an outside authority idea, as opposed to you paraphrasing where it's your opinion. And when it's your opinion, then it's not interesting because we already finished with your opinion before and we know what you learned. If your story was good and we saw your growth and what you sacrificed, and everybody please take note for your personal stories, show us a sacrifice. Show us, even if it's, again, the story doesn't need to be completely exactly what was, but if you break it down to story elements, you will see that if you took an action to make something different. So that needs to be there. The quote is showing that someone else on the outside, Einstein, Lincoln, Caesar, Rosie O'Donnell, whoever it may be, they have the same conclusion that you do. All right? So that's the idea. Quote is affirmation from the outside. Okay?
Those
Now,
things needs to be at the end of the story or the end
the
of the
end.
TED Talk.
End of the talk. End of the talk. When you're done your
Okay.
story and you're piecing pieces together, you finish off again. You finish off with again. All of these should be 3, 4 sentences maximum. The goal here, what I'm trying to show, is restraint. Our gut will want us to say more, to really beat it over the head and keep bringing our thoughts. Trust the intelligence of your audience. The longer we go on, the more we lose them. You want to finish in a punch. You want to take people on a quick ride. 4 minutes is not so fast, and then we want to be done. It teaches us to let go. Okay, that's what I'm saying. Show, don't tell. Don't talk about what you feel and your own thoughts. Ignore that. Show us how your actions show the difference. That we know that, for example, you're going back to Shiran, the example of the day. If we know Shiran gave up her love of Zara because of her love of learning. And we know the pain because she went every Monday, had the best time, got the best sales. All teachers gave her compliments on, wow, we think that is the most amazing shirt. Where'd you get that? Zara. Is it still there? Nope, it's gone. End of season sale. And she gives that up. She gives up because obviously the best sales happen during the week. The weekend, everybody's going. It's not going to be left. But on Monday, it's when the sales start and no one's going out. I don't know if this is true. I'm making this up, but I'm saying that like it really adds to the stakes building it in. So if we have this shopping, conscious, aware individual who gives up this big important thing to her, possibly loses money, loses free time. She does it for her learning. That's a really compelling story. And now Shiran is our hero. Shiran probably will remain our hero in our minds for the next like two weeks. We're all clapping for you, Shiran. Now you should start going checking out the Zara in your area. See if you can make this, come true. Um, okay, so all right.
Are we
So now
talking
moving
about statistics? Could you get an example of affirming it?
of what?
Your last points, you called it affirmation, I think. Outside
Affirmation.
affirmation.
Outside affirmation. Yeah, it's giving you support to your idea
What,
from
like
something.
20% of workaholics are late, or of shopaholics are late, or like what? Like,
Yeah, you can do that. Like ideally your fact or whatever you bring for the introduction should slightly like hot takey offend the audience, should not be obvious.
Daniel, Daniel.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. No, didn't you say not to give percentages and like details, like numbers, details, like just to say like
Yeah.
most or less?
No, I'm about to talk about data and it's using exact numbers, but numbers come in the numbers place. Usually, I'll say for the sake of our presentations, the idea, sorry, I picked up my hand on myself. The idea with the data is it should come in the middle of the story when you're at your low or like around that area, but definitely not after the end because then the audience isn't interested anymore. Okay, so that's it for conclusions. Are there any
but wait, can you give an
questions? Yes.
example to of the, what did you call it now again? The
Quote.
outside affirmation.
Okay, a quote. Okay, so let's take right
Or a
now.
proverb.
Yeah. The main thing with the quote, which is important, is it's you need to cite the source. Okay? This is the important. So if right now, let's say right now we're talking about being late. Okay? Also, by the way, for whoever says it, tell us their job. Cite the source and tell us their name, um, job, and year. Or year of life or approximate year. Okay? So, let's see, I see a good one here. Okay, I'm just trying to find the sayer of the so general wisdom. Okay, no. All right. Actually, here's what we're gonna do this together. All right. So I'm looking for a quote. So I just saw I looked for quotes about timeliness. Sec, I'll move it over to here. Oh, that's not what I want. So the quote is, if you can't be on time, be early. Okay. It's a quote that I found over here looking for quotes. And I'm like, who said it? It's a good quote, but there's no source. Okay. Now I'm going to start searching for it. And the automatic Gemini in Google says, okay, so Robin Sharma says it. By the way, any name is fine. Robin Sharma, I see a second time. Here it gives some other phrase, but okay, Robin Sharma. Okay? Who is Robin Sharma? Does anybody know? I don't
Isn't
know.
he the one with
No.
הנזיר שמכר את הפרארי?
נזיר, כן, כן.
This
Okay,
one?
so
מועדון
Yes,
החמש בבוקר, 5 a.m. club.
yes,
okay,
the Ferrari.
beautiful. Okay, we now have it. Okay, very good. Right, good job, everybody. Okay, but like let's say we don't know who he is, or we want to be sure. He is a law. Okay, so he's a writer. Okay, so he is a Canadian writer. All right. So famous Canadian writer. If I was going to use a quote here at the end. Okay. So let's here do this together. Move it back to the slideshow. By the way, good job. Who read this book, The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari? All right, I see some people. All right, so okay, so like famous Canadian best-selling writer Robin Sharma said, if you cannot be on time, then be early. Okay. So you quote the name, job, and then the quote. And that's it. So now this doesn't directly relate to the Chiron story, but if we say right now her lesson was, I go shopping on Fridays, and now instead of being late, I'm early to class. Because I realized that by coming late, I was missing a half hour, I was missing by parking, and I gave up my time on Fridays. So it's like, and from that day, I'm always early to class. Kids are in bed by 5 p.m. Magically, I'm just that good. And like famous Canadian best, or not even famous, like Canadian best-selling writer Robin Sharma said, if you can't be on time, then be early. See you all at the closing ceremony. Something like that. All right. So you see here, this is one sentence, but it's giving outside affirmation. You can also, if you want to add, like best-selling Canadian writer, author of The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari, a book with 50 million sales, whatever it may be. You need to show the credentials of the person. The more famous, the less detail. But even saying like President of the United States, George H.W. Bush or whatever it might be. Okay? So, quote, it brings outside support for what it is that you're trying to say. It supports your idea from a different place, and it has the stamp of someone else saying it, which is the opposite. If I say right now, it's like, so everybody, I'm always like, I come early to class. I want to tell you all, like, it's something I've learned. I have learned to be early. I believe we should all be early. If you're not going to be on time, you should be early. It doesn't have the same punch when it's your opinion. We don't want to hear people's opinions. We want to hear their stories, but we don't want to lecture. We want to come to conclusion ourselves. So after you take people's story of what you did and don't tell us what to think, let us reach our own conclusions. You finish it with a quote, that's a way to finish. All right, so to review again, premise, and that's why key takeaway is number one. Two, callback. Three, quote. These is how you finish your presentations. Okay? Are there any questions? Awesome. Okay. So these are meant to be pretty self-explanatory, and don't get stuck on these too much. They are not what will save or kill your presentation. It's about your story. It's about your pain point. It's about not describing what's in your head, but showing us in the world outside how that pushes you. You can talk about your decisions. Don't talk about your thought process. Okay? That for me, that's the big achievement of this. If we're able to do this in our final presentations, I will consider it a success. Finally, data. All right. So in the middle of your personal story, and you think, wait, we're in the middle of the story, what's going on? But that's the point. Is like if you remember back in when movie theaters, had breaks, instead of forcing us to sometimes go to the bathroom while missing part of the movie, they used to have intermissions. Apparently, many years ago, people would have to change the reel in the middle of the movie. But I think we all remember intermissions in movie theaters. Yeah. All right. Let's see. Let's see. Where is Let's just see. Everyone's nod. Do we all wait? That's sorry. Do we all remember intermissions in movie theaters? Okay. Remember, it was and usually we're like, why? I want to know what happens next, unless the movie sucked, and then that's something else. Okay. So we remember that. At this point, the audience is with us, and keep this in mind. The audience is with us until we resolve the challenge. The audience is with us until they know that we're safe. And this is the time that we want to appeal to the rational. Now, in a proper TED Talk, now if the goal is storytelling and narrative, you don't really have data. But if you're giving a TED Talk, TED Talks, which are 17 minutes long, have story, data, story, data, story, data. Now, some people have a story in multiple parts. They practice this a lot. There's a TED Talk by the guy who landed a plane on the river and a Sully. Anyway, someone landed a plane where the motor blew out on the Hudson River. He was a big hero for doing what he was trained to do. And when he tells his story, I think also a story by somebody who was on the plane, he gives part one, the engine blows out, two, the middle, three, the resolution. And it carries
On
us
the
through it.
Hudson, you mean on the Hudson, right?
Yes, yes, exactly.
Mm.
Sorry, on the Hudson River. Exactly. Beautiful. 10 points for Gryffindor. So for us, the best time to say what we want to say is when the audience is waiting and when they're interested. When things seem the lowest, take 30 seconds, give us the information to really support the idea. Because remember, we're looking to persuade here. We're looking to educate, and we need to bring some form of data. And if it's, the presentation is going well, then this is, there's no good time during a story for information. But at the same time, information is something we need to impart, or else we just left people with, a feeling without a conclusion. So the data is supposed to support the idea. Now, in some formats, you would get this out in the beginning, but the ideal time when we're looking at the TED Talk format for students in school, because again, it's one presentation, it's one story, they need to put data somewhere. You do it in the beginning, you bore the audience. You do it in the end, you lose the audience. When's the time? Quickly, concisely, in the middle of the story where they are waiting for what comes next. Okay, so for data, what is the most useful type of data? Because again, now data, by the way, should be opinion free. This is so. Sorry, I muted myself. That was incorrect. So data. This is persuading the rational part of the mind. For data, my recommendation is to use numbers. Okay, not round numbers, and through that show us why what you're offering is correct. Why practicing is not a good thing to do before your first improv class.
Do you mean to
Why,
give information from researchers
yes,
and
exactly,
and
exactly. You want
experiments?
and if you have to show us how to do it and give us instructions on how to make this soup that's going to make our skin shine, this is the place to do it. You don't
Okay.
have too long. It's like 30 seconds, but this is you've already convinced the audience to listen. If done right, the audience is there and they're now open. They want to know what's going to happen to you, and you have earned their interest for this period of time. By the way, does anyone know pathos, ethos, logos, ethos, pathos? Anyone know the format? Anyway, it's a way to structure persuasive speech where it's emotion, authority, logic, authority, emotion. So we're bringing people on a journey here, and now when they're going to be most interested, they're going to want to know what happens next. You say, by the way, like before I tell you what like happened, because I'm at my lowest point in my life, I want to bring some additional information to stuff. So, data. Use numbers, not round numbers. Okay. Now, first of all, the number rules is to use specific unround numbers and do not use the round numbers and do not use percentages. And I'm going to quickly tell you why. So, unround numbers, by whoever does a Model UN class with me, this is also part of what I teach there for the same reason. Specific, okay, whole means no decimals, no 0.3, 0.5, but you want to use specific and unround numbers.
Just a
Okay?
second, Daniel.
Yeah.
Nathaniel is trying to reconnect. Nathaniel, you said something about it? He's trying to enter the lesson.
He's in the room. I see him.
No, I got back. I got back. Thank you very much for the
Welcome back.
welcome back.
Okay. So specific hold on round numbers. I would say in the beginning, just trust me on this, but we'll give some rationale. First of all, on round numbers are more persuasive and more accurate. Think about it. We naturally round out numbers. Too many zeros slides through our mind. 10,000 police versus 10,622 police. One I looked for, the other one I'm guesstimating. That's not the result that we want. So that's about unround numbers. And if you have a number data, make it less round. Okay? It's gonna sound better to the mind. Okay? The problem with percentages is we don't know how to evaluate a percentage. 20% more students came this week. Does that mean 20% means to us if we don't know how many students to begin with? We don't know what 20% is. 20% more, is that 5? Is it 50? I don't know. So for this, you want to give it a number. So if you find a percentage, do a bit of extra work, find a number. If we know the class has 30 students, it means 6. So don't say 20%. Say 6 more students came to class. My class has 30 students. Last week there were 15. Now there's 21. We know what to do with that. Make it easy on the mind. You lose a lot of impact if you give percentages that aren't connected to anything, whatever way you slice it. My house now produces 15% less garbage is not the same as my house now produces 1.5 less garbage bags a week. Or I can say we're producing the equivalent of 25 cans of tuna less garbage. We know what to do with that. We understand it. We can't visualize a percentage. That's why I say don't use percentages. If you have to use percentages because you feel it adds an oomph, connect it to a real number. This is your test. If you feel that the percentage is still important after you put the real number, you can use both, but you cannot use a percentage without explaining it. For example, 30% of the buses in Tel Aviv went on strike. And I want to show this process and walk us through it because it's important to see the distinction as we naturally we'll throw out percentages because we think they're impressive. They're not because they don't connect to anything real. 30% of buses on Tel Aviv went on strike. Does anyone here feel anything? Do we know what that means? We don't know how many buses are until we don't know anything. Okay. Now I want us to feel the difference in the process we're about to go through. All right. And this is our last thing for today. 30% of buses went on strike. If we research, we find that there are 362 buses in Tel Aviv. To use this percentage, we need to connect it to a number. Okay. Let's go through the process. Adi, can you please read us the process?
Yep. So how to use percentages. 30% of the buses in Tel Aviv went on strike. Total buses, 1,207. 30% of total, 362. At least 50 people ride each bus. Very low guesstimation. 8,100 people not able to ride.
Beautiful. Okay, so we see this now. Doing a little bit of math, and sometimes, but there's some digging. You can also even, ask your AI assistant to give me a unround number that's somehow realistic. But like there are a bunch of numbers, finance sources. Okay, we see here total buses. Okay, 32 went on strike. Total bus 1,207. 50 people ride on bikes. We're just giving a low guesstimation, getting on and off probably more. But if it's 50 people on each ride, that means 18,100 people are not able to ride if there's a strike. If we give the streets and the bus lines, the bus number 4, very popular line, can be even more. So instead of saying, as we said, 30% of the buses went on strike, we can say 30% of the buses that went on strike, which is 362 buses, which is 362 drivers not driving, which is 18,100 people not going for a ride. I'll even add here a day. All right? A day. So we see the difference. Now, this is why it's 30% can be effect, but only to say 30%, then explain it and let it build in people's minds. But if I also say 362 buses don't drive per day, which is 18,100 people not driving a day, we understand that. We know the size of our school is what, 300, 500, 1,000? That's the entire school times 18 not going for a ride. And more than that, we can just say, thanks to the bus strike, 18,100 people are not going for a ride every day. So do we need the rest? I leave that to your judgment call. But I want to show how here, through the use of percentages, we're able to bring it to be numbers that are real, that mean something to us, that we feel in our gut, that we feel inside and we understand. Make it easy on your audience, show impact, show size. An unround whole number without a percentage is the way to do that. All right. So that's the idea with data. You can also bring names, you can also bring studies, you can cite reports, but within it, bring quantitative proof. Quantitative proof is the thing we haven't dealt with. We've dealt with opening, hooks, what's in it for me. We talked about in the beginning. We talked about topics and hot takes and things that will be a little bit different. We also showed how we didn't connect to the obvious. But if we're looking to convince the rational mind, we still need to bring outside proof from the factual world. And that's where the idea of using an unround number comes in, from a study, from a time that worked on 362 people or bus drivers or whatever it may be. Okay, so that is data. Are there any questions on data? All right. That's very cool that we do not have any questions. All right, so are there any questions on what we went over today as a whole? All right, also seeing none. Okay, then I want to go over, and by the way, I meant for this week to be less heavy in some of the previous ones. It's more technical with the purpose of showing that these things are not the most important parts. Rather, the parts about the story and the connecting and like, because the emotional journey part is, I feel by far the most, like the whole thing depends on it. Everything else will only work if that part is good.